Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
I am Eli Whitney, an inventor, mechanical engineer, and manufacturer. Most folks know me best for inventing the cotton gin, but I also dedicated a massive portion of my life to pioneering industrial mass production techniques up north, specifically in the manufacturing of firearms.
Fantastic to have you, Eli. Let's take it back to the absolute beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on December 8, 1765, out on a prosperous family farm in Westborough, Massachusetts.
And what was your given name at birth?
I was named right after my father, so my given name was Eli Whitney Jr.
Is there a story behind your birth name?
Not a grand or complicated tale, no. It was simply the old New England tradition of passing down the father's name to the eldest son. Carrying my father's name came with a lot of pride, and, as the oldest, a good deal of responsibility too.
I bet. What was your hometown like growing up?
Westborough was a classic, bustling colonial Massachusetts farming community. It was full of hardworking people, open fields, and lots of agriculture. But for me, the most exciting part of the whole town was right on our property, my father's workshop.
What was your family life like?
It was a loving household, but we faced heavy trials early on. My parents, Eli and Elizabeth, had 4 children in very quick succession. The toll was too much for my dear mother. She became bedridden and sadly passed away in 1777 when I was just 11 years old. My father later remarried a wonderful woman named Judith Hazelden, who brought her own children into our home. We had a large, busy household where everyone had to pitch in.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility for a young guy. What kind of kid were you?
Oh, I was a tinkerer through and through. While I did my farm chores and went to school in the winter, I practically lived in my father's workshop. I had a severe fascination with mechanics. If there was a tool, a clock, or a piece of machinery around, I had to figure out how it worked, take it apart, and put it back together.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
Growing up during the American Revolution, there was always a lingering fear of financial ruin for the family. The war brought immense economic hardship to our region. I worried about our farm surviving and whether we would have the resources to prosper in such uncertain times.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
To be quite honest, as a young boy, I just wanted to be a master mechanic or a craftsman. But as I grew into my teenage years, my ambitions shifted. I caught a tremendous desire to get a higher education and eventually become a lawyer.
A lawyer? That's a twist. What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I thoroughly enjoyed the applied arts and sciences, anything involving mathematics, physics, and practical logic. I liked subjects where you could see the direct impact of a concept on the physical world.
What was your first job?
My very first entrepreneurial venture started when I was only 14. Because of the Revolutionary War, imports of nails from England had completely stopped. Seeing the local shortage, I persuaded my father to let me set up a forge in his workshop. I started my own nail-making business. It was so profitable that I even hired an assistant to help me out. When the war ended and nail demand dropped, I pivoted to making hat pins and walking canes.
Talk about a teenage entrepreneur. Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
My sister Elizabeth used to say that even at 16, I had a unique wisdom to perceive probable consequences and act on foresight. I realized I looked at problems differently when I decided at 19 that I absolutely had to go to college. Most boys my age finish school in their mid-teens, but I worked for years, alternating between studying and teaching school, just to save up enough money for tuition. I finally entered Yale College at 23, which made me much older than my classmates.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
After graduating from Yale in 1792, I took a job as a private tutor for a wealthy family in South Carolina, just to earn money. On the boat ride down, I met a wonderful woman named Catherine Greene, the widow of Revolutionary War General Nathaniel Greene. She invited me to visit her plantation, Mulberry Grove in Georgia. It seemed like a simple, pleasant detour, but it completely changed the trajectory of my entire life.
What was your biggest break?
While staying at Mulberry Grove, I overheard local planters lamenting how incredibly slow and unprofitable it was to separate the seeds from green seed upland cotton. It took a worker an entire day just to clean a single pound of fiber by hand. Hearing that was my biggest break. It sparked an idea, and within 10 days, I built a crude mechanical model consisting of a wooden cylinder with iron wire hooks and a brush. Just like that, the cotton gin was born, and it could clean over 50 times more cotton in a day than a person could by hand.
That is incredible innovation. But what were your biggest struggles before success?
Well, the struggle actually came after the invention. My business partner Phineas Miller and I decided we wouldn't just sell the machines. We wanted to build them, install them throughout the South, and charge planters a heavy percentage of their cotton yield. The planters absolutely hated this idea, and because the machine's design was so beautifully simple, they just went ahead and built their own pirated versions.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Oh, there were dark days where I was utterly exhausted. My manufacturing factory in New Haven burned to the ground in the mid-1790s, burying us in debt. I spent years tied up in endless, stressful lawsuits trying to protect my patent rights. It felt like a losing battle against an entire region, and Congress even refused to renew my patent when it expired in 1807. I famously wrote that an invention can be so valuable as to be worthless to the inventor. But instead of quitting entirely, I chose to redirect my talents elsewhere.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
Persistence, methodical planning, and precise drafting. I learned that you cannot rely on luck. Before I touched a piece of wood or metal, I spent hours drawing sketches, organizing my thoughts, and visualizing every moving part. Keeping a meticulous, structured workspace was essential for me.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
If I hadn't taken that trip south, I likely would have finished my original plan to study law and opened a quiet legal practice somewhere in New England.
What was your life like before fame?
It was a life of quiet, hard work. It was spent teaching schoolboys, studying late into the night by candlelight at Yale, and trying to prove to my family that my obsession with mechanics could actually yield a respectable career.
How did relationships change after success?
The business world made me guarded. The betrayal by the Southern planters who copied my work made it difficult to trust people in commerce. However, the deep friendships I formed back at Yale stayed strong and became my saving grace, helping me secure government connections later in life.
Did fame bring happiness?
Fame from the cotton gin brought me nothing but headaches, long court battles, and a mountain of debt. True satisfaction only came later, when I achieved financial stability through my own grit, engineering prowess, and manufacturing contracts up north.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The downside was becoming a public target. Because my invention was transforming the entire global economy, everyone wanted a piece of it, and they were perfectly willing to trample over my legal rights to get it. I became famous, but for a long time, I was also completely broke.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
Many people thought I became fabulously wealthy from the cotton gin. In reality, my partner and I made practically nothing from the gin itself. Eventually, South Carolina and a few other states paid us a modest settlement to drop the lawsuits, but it barely covered our expenses.
What was your darkest moment?
Watching my New Haven factory burn to the ground while we were already drowning in lawsuits. It felt like everything I had physically and intellectually built was reduced to ash in a single night.
What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
I deeply regretted how naive Phineas and I were with our initial business model for the cotton gin. If we had simply sold the machines at a reasonable price, rather than trying to monopolize the cotton processing itself, we would have avoided years of misery and probably made a grand fortune.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
People often credit me with inventing the concept of interchangeable parts for manufacturing. I must set the record straight. The brilliant idea of uniform, interchangeable components actually originated in Europe well before me. My true contribution was bringing that concept to America, championing it to the government, and designing the power-driven machine tools, like early milling machines and filing jigs, to actually make mass production a reality.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong, and how did you handle it?
In 1798, Still deeply in debt from the cotton gin, I took a massive gamble. I signed a contract with the US War Department to deliver 10,000 muskets in just over 2 years. The trouble was, I didn't even have a factory built, let alone the machinery to make uniform parts. Everything went wrong logistically. I faced endless delays, and it took me 8 long years instead of 2 to fully deliver those muskets. To handle it, I had to use my wit, put on a few rather staged demonstrations of the uniform parts to impress government officials in Washington, and buy myself the time needed to perfect the machinery.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
The fortune I finally earned from my armory on the Mill River allowed me to find peace. It gave me the freedom to build a beautiful worker village called Whitneyville and to finally settle down.
What personal battles were you fighting privately?
For the vast majority of my adult life, I battled profound loneliness. I was so consumed by work, lawsuits, and building my business that I didn't marry until I was 52 years old. I married Henrietta Edwards in 1817, and though our time together was short, she brought immense joy to my later years.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My father, without a doubt. He gave me access to his workshop, trusted me with his tools when I was just a boy, and allowed my inventive spirit to thrive.
What was life like in your final years?
They were filled with the warmth of my young children and wife, but they were also overshadowed by a severe, painful battle with prostate cancer. Even as my health failed, my mind never stopped inventing. I actually designed several mechanical devices and flexible catheters to help ease my own physical pain.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was continuously refining the operations at my armory, ensuring it was a sustainable business that my family could inherit and run long after I was gone.
When and where and how did you pass away, and how old were you?
I passed away on January 8th, 1825, in New Haven, Connecticut. I succumbed to my illness just a month after my 59th birthday.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
Because I started college so late, Yale University later created an admissions program specifically designed to support non-traditional, older undergraduate students, and they named it the Eli Whitney Students Program.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
There was a persistent rumor that I didn't actually invent the cotton gin at all, and that I stole the entire design from Catherine Green or even from the enslaved laborers on her plantation. While Catherine provided wonderful encouragement and financial support, the mechanical execution and design were entirely my own doing.
What was your most unique habit?
I suppose it was my habit of constantly carrying a pocket knife and whittling or examining the grain of wood wherever I went. I couldn't look at an object without analyzing its structural integrity.
What was your favorite food?
I'm always partial to a simple, hearty New England boiled dinner. Corned beef with cabbage, turnips, and potatoes. Simple food for a New England farm boy at heart.
Did you have a favorite restaurant?
In my day, we frequented local taverns rather than modern restaurants. I enjoyed a quiet meal and a hot drink at the local taverns near the Yale campus in New Haven.
What was your favorite book?
I read a great deal of practical treatises on mathematics, philosophy, and mechanics. Benjamin Franklin's writings on electricity and industry were a massive source of inspiration to me.
Did you have any known rivalries?
My biggest rivalries were with the countless Southern mechanics and planters like Hodge and Holmes, who modified my wire-tooth gin design with circular saw blades and claimed it as a completely brand new invention.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
When I was a young boy, my father owned a remarkably fine watch that he treasured above all else. One Sunday, while the family was away at church, I stayed home, pretending to be sick. The moment they left, I took that priceless watch apart, down to the very last gear and spring, just to see how it worked. Luckily, my hands were steady enough to put it entirely back together before they walked through the front door, and he never suspected a thing.
That is wild. What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
When I went to Washington to demonstrate my interchangeable parts to President John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, the musket locks I brought weren't truly perfectly interchangeable yet. I had carefully marked and sorted the piles of parts behind the scenes beforehand so that they would fit together smoothly during the presentation. It was a bit of high-stakes theater, but it worked beautifully.
Did you ever prank someone?
I wasn't much for cruel pranks, but I did enjoy using my mechanical skills to trick my siblings. I once rigged a series of secret strings and weights in our family barn so that doors would open and close completely on their own, convincing them for a brief afternoon that the barn was haunted.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
For a man who lived very frugally for decades, buying the massive plot of land along the Mill River to construct a massive, state-of-the-art armory and a whole village for my workers felt incredibly outlandish and risky at the time.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Do not let early failures or the dishonesty of others define your worth. If one door closes, or if an invention doesn't bring the reward you expected, take the knowledge you gained, pivot, and apply your talents to a brand new problem. True success is born of resilience.
Eli, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before we sign off?
I just want to say that history often remembers us by a single invention or a single sentence in a textbook, but a life is made up of constant learning, adapting, and overcoming hardships. I hope my journey inspires your listeners to keep tinkering, keep learning, and never give up when things get tough. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Calvin. It has been a true joy.
It was an absolute honor, Eli. Today, we took a fascinating look into the life of Eli Whitney, discovering that he was not just the inventor of the cotton gin, but a resilient New England farm boy, a teenage nail manufacturer, and a true pioneer of American industrial mass production, who overcame immense legal battles and hardships to leave an undeniable mark on history. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.